All right, so it can be what you consider natural to plan for. So if I were Mormon, if I had been raised Mormon, I would, in my high school years, naturally think that what I was going to do was graduate high school and go on a mission trip, right? There would not be anything unusual or peculiar about that. If I live in Israel, guess what I plan to do after I graduate high school? You know what you have to do? Everyone in the military. Everyone in Israel has to serve in the military. That is just considered a part of your development, to serve in the military. It's what you do. It's your life script, the way you think life is supposed to pan out. In our culture, it might mean joining the military, attending college, going on a pilgrimage. A lot of people think, okay, graduate high school, go to college, take a couple of years off, hike the Appalachian Trail, find myself, whatever. No, people do. I want to find myself. That is or if you don't want to do like some people go, I want to backpack through Europe. See, that's obviously a popular one with someone. The lights turn on for backpacking through Europe. Really, but not the Appalachian? A little editorializing. Right? Engage in an internship, right? So you might say, I'm willing to work for slave laborers for 2 years, doing bad work if, I get my foot in the door, right? So this is your life script, how you think your life is going to pan out. It contains some gendered aspects to it, right? It also contains gender-neutral aspects. What might be a gendered life script?
If females are expected to stay home and not work.
So a female might be expected to stay home and not that is changing, but yeah, that is a gendered life script where it used to be, especially in the 20s and 30s, if you were a female and you went to work, a legitimate question they would ask was, are you planning on getting married? Because they would assume that if you're getting married, you're just going to quit. We don't do that anymore. Or another one that many women face, so I'm about to be 40, so I'm well past my billion-second party. But it's sometimes females will be like, oh, well, you don't have to worry about if you want to have kids or not, because you can. But if you're female, you might think, okay, if I want to have kids, I need to try to have them at an earlier age. Yeah, 40 or 34, 35, somewhere in that neighborhood. Or skills that you're encouraged to learn earlier in life, right? So many girls especially are trained for tap, ballet, and jazz. Right, those are the 3 dances that you get to learn. I think I learned square dance. Right? It's the first time you ever touch a girl in elementary school. And you're like, oh. Y'all did this, right? Y'all learned a square dance. You didn't learn a square dance? What?
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against square dance. I would love to learn the line dance. Do you know how to line dance?
Well, no, not good, but I like it.
I said is there a place to do line dancing? I would go to learn a line dance.
Yes.
We learned line dancing in an aerobics class here, I took.
Really?
Yeah.
Look, I'm taking classes every semester. I'll take a line dancing course. I'll be like, all right. I mean, you already taught me to kayak and classical dance. They taught me how to do ballroom. Yeah. But let's say as a little boy, as a little kid, this is true, I took gymnastics. I love gymnastics. Let's say I told you that I wanted to do rhythmic gymnastics. Why can't I do rhythmic gymnastics?
Do they have that in the male Olympic?
Okay, but you're sort of escaping the question. Why can't I do rhythmic gymnastics other than our culture says who does rhythmic gymnastics? Women, right? There's no other reason, I probably would not be very good at it, of the ribbon, I can't even name them, the rhythm. What?
I bet you do.
Yeah, I'll add the video to the online version. Right? But think about it, it's like there's no reason other than our culture says men don't do this. And our culture says to women that women don't do other things. Like, just this week, did anyone see this in the news? What law passed in France? Did you see this? Apparently in France, until last week, it was technically legal for women to wear pants. Like, it wasn't enforced, but it was technically legal. And they were like, let's get this law off the books. But when pants were first developed for females, it was a major social issue. But the bigger point is that your life script will include all of these things. what you believe is appropriate for you to wear. So clothing up to a certain age is totally cool, totally acceptable. But I tell you, many times I hear people talking and they'll go, they're too old to be wearing that. Right? Or with hair, like, oh, they're too old to have their hair like that or whatever. It's like, okay, I didn't realize that, but whatever. Or if you decide you want to be part of a social group that opera is your thing, and there are people who love opera. I'm not in their company, though I did see one last week. Does anyone, this is a little trivia, anyone know the upper limit to be the young opera patron? It's 45. So whenever I go to operas, I'm like, woohoo, I'm young. It's so funny. It's like, really, I'm a young opera patron? I'm never that anywhere else. Or one that I wrestle with now, since I do take classes, I have a student ID. It's, should I be able to use my student ID at places? Okay, y'all gonna be my y'all gonna be my moral compass.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna let y'all vote, so it's anonymous. Should I be able to use my student ID places to get in?
You're not paying for these classes, are you, though?
I work here. Perhaps you've seen me around.
I'm sure not everyone in this room is paying for their own classes either.
Yeah. All right, so okay, but I have a student ID.
I'm paying enough for you.
So should I be able to use my student ID to get in places for free, or am I too old? A is I can use it. B is you are an old man. What? Too bad you don't have a clicker over there.
I'm sure you know what my answer is anyways.
Let's see, what would be worse for me? Oh, I can't use it. Okay. Oh, sweet. So we got, yes, you can still use it. No, you can't. Hell no. So you do have a clicker. All right. Well, that certainly solves my moral dilemma. I'd be like, hey, I got 21 people who said I click. That's actually useful because I did use it at Samford to get into the opera. We got front row seats for like 12. Madame Butterfly. Yeah, it was actually a pretty good production. This is actually from, they show operas also at the theater in Trussville from the New York Met. You know, it's a still from one of theirs. Anyway, so the life script includes the type of injuries you can expect, right? So if you're a football player, you know what kind of injuries that you're going to get. Or if you're a basketball player, or if you're a coal miner, or whatever. And so people will just go, or as you just start aging, you know, I will tell you what happens is you just wake up with an injury, right? You're like, how did I injure my back when I was asleep? And you're like, you have no clue. And people just go, yeah, you're getting old. I'm like, yeah. It will happen. And when it does, when you wake up in pain, you're like, damn hell. It will. You'll just wake up and you'll have no idea how you hurt yourself. And you'll be like, okay, you're running through your evening. You're like, okay, I didn't drink anything. I was just asleep. And yet I am hurting. It'll happen. It includes what you feel is appropriate at given ages, right? So if a 14-year-old says she would like or he would like to get married, we're like, that's inappropriate. What about tattoos? Are tattoos appropriate for 14-year-olds?
It depends on where you.
You're too young for that.
So you would go, they're too young. So what? So if you were in charge, what age would you allow tattoos?
18?
18?
Get out and get yourself a tattoo.
Yeah. Well, you may not have a job. You may be in college. I tend to think I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're an adult, but you're going to regret that tattoo. You know, I know you love the Power Rangers now, and who doesn't? Seriously, it's like, oh, that's going to be a bad move. It also influences what you see as being a good parent. Your life script is part of, when you're raising your own kids, you say, okay, you're 14, a tattoo's not appropriate for you, or pierced ears are, or let's see some others. Clothing is a big one. Like, what age, this usually comes up with female clothing, like thongs. Never, okay, that would be one where you have to sort of answer these questions. So, okay, we often raise our kids in a culture with our biases about what we think is going to make a good adult, right? So we often force our kids to do things because we think that's what is important. Let me give you some examples of this from other cultures, because it's hard to see with our own. So I want to use other cultures to put this in relief. In Spartan society, it was quite common, if you were male, what you do, you'd be raised by your parents until about the age of 4 or 5. Then they would take you, the state would take you away from the parents and raise you in these large rooms with a bunch of other boys your age, where they would not feed you enough food, and you were encouraged to go steal food from other people. And you would only get in trouble if you got caught. So they would deliberately underfeed you to encourage you to steal food, to encourage you to go out, because you were supposed to be learning the skills of warfare. And if you were a young Spartan female, you also tend, these are showing them exercising, they would all tend to exercise naked. Our culture would just lose it on this. What? Kids, but think about it, that's one of our cultural beliefs, is that seeing a naked body is going to turn you into some sort of whatever. No one ever finishes the sentence, but it's like, oh, we can't allow kids to see naked bodies because... Anyway, so it was so it was common, and actually it was very common for Spartan males not to marry till around the age of 30, and they would marry typically a bride around the age of 16, and that was just considered normal. And if you think about how our culture has shifted, you may be more appreciative. Like when I was back in high school, it was considered normal for a senior to date a freshman. It wasn't. No one said anything about it. I can remember my history teacher trying to set me up with a freshman. I still remember her hair to this day because it did like this. And I was like, you think? Oh man, I was like mad at him. But now our culture thinks that's what? Too young. We think that's a sex offender. I'd be a sex offender. Actually, in other classes, I basically demonstrate how probably all of y'all are sex offenders in some way. Yeah. Have you ever peed outside?
Wait.
Sex offender. Sex offender.
Who was on the beach at night?
What?
Who was on the beach at night?
Well then, sex offender. Yeah, that's actually technically a way to get a sex offense is by urinating outside. And if there happens to be a kid who could conceivably see you and the prosecutor doesn't like you, that's a possibility. I'll give you a famous Greek phrase that captures some of this. Don't worry, I'm going to translate it for you. It's "heitane epitas," and it was a phrase that Spartan wives and mothers would say to their husbands and sons. "Heitane epitas," and the way this would work is the Spartan upbringing was very, very interested in creating particular views of masculinity and femininity. That if you were a Spartan man especially, you were trained to be a warrior. That's your job. Here's a little tidbit about Spartan life. You know how you became a full-fledged Spartan male? The Spartans had this group of individuals who they were in charge of, who lived in an area adjacent to Sparta. And they would have to go and kill one of them to be considered a full-fledged Spartan male. Like you would have to go and find a member of this tribe and kill them. It was very much, and if you were a Spartan female, you were trained to give birth to good Spartan warriors. And so when parents raised their kids, they raised them in these very hard, or they allowed the state to raise them in these very harsh conditions, cold, hungry, to toughen them up. And this phrase, "heitane epitas," is a phrase that Spartan mothers would often say to, as I said, to their wives. Spartan mothers would say to their sons. Spartan wives would say to their husbands, because it reflected when they went off into battle. The Spartans would carry their swords and shields with them, and what the wives would say, or what the mothers would say, was, "You either come back with this epiton, or on this epitas." So it was considered shameful to be in battle and to throw your shield and run away. So they encouraged. They're like, you either go and you win victoriously, or you die fighting. And we all know that from one of the stories of the Spartans in the midst of the Persian Wars, right? The 300. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Is it was considered more glorious to die in battle than to go, okay, we've been surrounded, and let's negotiate a peace. So, but this idea colored their entire view of culture. We see this even in modern times.